We are going to go ahead and get started. All right, so my name is Olga Prizhbilov. I will be presenting for you today on the counselor imposter syndrome and how to battle it. Right? So lots of things to talk about there. Okay? So first, I want us all to close our eyes. And most of you have your cameras off, so you can feel very free to do that. So close your eyes, sit back, take a deep, deep breath, breathe out. And with your eyes still closed, imagine yourself, you are now a singer. And today's performance day. You're about to go up on the stage. And then the anxiety kicks in, right? And you go up on the stage, you are right there, you see the people, everyone is there, a big crowd. And you start singing and your voice cracks. Now let's open our eyes and remember that was not you, that's somebody else. That did not happen to you. We did not just traumatize you for the day. So what happened? If you are a singer, what happened? So worst case scenario, your voice really just went out and you couldn't sing, right? But in the majority of the cases, it's something that happens in our brain and our psychology that prevents us from performing at our best. And most of the time, it's all of the thoughts of, will I do well? Will the public, will my people take me as well as I want them to take me? Will everyone be impressed? Will they judge me? How do I look? How do I sound? How do I present myself? All of those things. So here's a little bit about me. So when we talk about counselor imposter syndrome, I don't know a counselor who hasn't suffered from it. Right? So I will share a little bit about myself and a little bit about the imposter syndrome that I went through. So in 2014 was when I graduated from Sacramento State from the counselor education program in the career specialization. And like most of you right now, the dream is you get a job as soon as you graduate, right? Maybe even before you graduate. So that was the hope. I applied to a few jobs. The one job that I applied for that I really had my sights set, it was one of the internships that I did. And when I didn't even get called for the interview, my supervisor called me in and said that I could have walked on water and not been as good enough as the other candidates. So take that as a new graduate, right? You've done the work. I did 3 internships. I worked at the same time. I was among the top in my class. And still, it was very frustrating. And of course, it hurt. Every time we don't get something that we dream about, it hurts, right? So that happened to me. And the dream job was out the door. So I started applying to other jobs. 1 month went by, 2 months went by, didn't get a job. I still had a regular day job that wasn't in counseling. So it was one of those, like you go do your job and then you have your second job of applying for work. And in August after graduation, I decided to start my private practice. So I did that. And as you can probably tell by my name, I'm pretty Russian. I'm Russian and Ukrainian, half and half. So I decided to start with my community. I went and communicated with all the people that I know, got on the Russian radio station, did a show on there, any way I could, just got the word out there. And that's been fun. So I've been doing that ever since. Whichever job I had, I've always done my private practice on the side. And that's kind of kept me going. That kept telling me, okay, I'm a counselor, I got this. So private practice, as you can imagine, it doesn't just fly right away. You don't have 1,000 clients calling you right away. So as that was happening, I still had my other job in marketing. And in 2015, almost a year, it was in the beginning of May was when I accepted a full-time job, a different full-time job that was in education, okay? And it was not a counseling position. And for the young Olga at that time, that was perfect. I was like, I have a job, it has benefits, it's great. It doesn't matter that it doesn't have the counselor job title. And that was fine with me. And then you start working there, and I used the counseling skills, definitely used the counseling skills when working with my students, when working with other faculty and staff and management. The counseling skills, once you gain them, you can't not use them, right? It's kind of like when you know how to walk, you're not going to crawl anymore as much. Counseling skills were there, the title wasn't there. And then at some point I started to believe that I'm not a counselor. I started to believe that, okay, so if I can't get a counseling position, that means it's just not me. I'm probably not a good counselor. And even if I got the position, probably wouldn't do well in it, right? So that took me 6 years. 6 years after that in a non-counseling position. What got me through those 6 years was being the best where I was. That has always been my goal, is maybe I'm not in the dream job yet, but I'm going to give my 100, my 200% to where I am today. Okay? And that's going to be one of our goals today, is to think about that. So that led me to the dream job that I have now. And it really is the dream job that I didn't know existed. It really didn't exist because I'm the first person in this position. So in June of 2021, I got a position as Director of Refugee Career Pathways with Los Rios. And I have been thriving ever since. It's like everything that, all the work that I've put in that I didn't see the results of. It's like when you put things into a tunnel and then finally something comes out. So that was it. It took me 6 years to get to where I wanted to go. And then after that, everything else started happening. So then after that, I heard about Sac State, and then it's always been like in the back of my mind, I want to come back and teach. So then that's how I got back into Sac State, and have been teaching this semester at EDC 260 and then 475, both amazing classes, super awesome experiences. So there's a little bit about me. Don't want to say too much more because we want to get into the topic. So some favorite quotes that get me through my time in this world. Okay? So hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I know that everybody agrees with this quote. For me, I've always been the type of person who knows that maybe I'm not the most talented, but the harder I work, the better I become at something, right? And I've done that all throughout my life. I started college as a music major, and I did not play music since I was a kid. I started as a teenager. And if you're going to become a musician, it's kind of tough to start late in the game, right? But I always knew that my hard work would get me where I want to go. And at some point, people see the result of your hard work as talent. So they assume that you're just good at something, when in reality, you know how much work you've put in to get to be good at something, right? So if you think that maybe you're not as talented, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You probably are talented and you're just giving yourself these negative thoughts, but think about the work that you can put in to get better at something. Okay? And then I already said the other quotes. So the last two are quotes from me. I'm sure someone has said them before at some point, but these are the things that I live by. So being the best where I am today. And then you do the right thing every single time, and you do the right thing long enough, and people will start to notice, and people will start to follow. So if you're starting a cause, you're starting a nonprofit, anything else like that, and no one sees you doing anything, you keep doing the right thing. You keep doing it every single time, not giving up on your standards, not giving up on your ethics, on your integrity. And at some point, people will notice. Right? So staying true to yourself. Okay? So with all that said, what is imposter syndrome? So I took this quote from the APA. They did an article back in 2013 about imposter syndrome. They spelled imposter with an O before the R, so just a heads up, whichever way it comes, it's the same thing. So the imposter phenomenon occurs among high achievers who are unable to internalize and accept their success. So those of you in the room who are sitting there and thinking, am I really a counselor? will I really be a counselor? First of all, pat yourself on the back. You are already a high achiever, right? Also think about, what do you tell your clients, or what will you tell your clients when they're coming to you with the same problem? A lot of the times we can tell others to do something, but it's really hard to do it ourselves. Right? So it's hard to act on what we preach. I'll give you an example. Just today, I was meeting with one of my peer mentors at my day job, so to speak, and they were asking me, who's in charge of this grant? And I am the director of the grant. But in my head, I'm like, do you mean my supervisor? And I gave her the name of my supervisor, who's not in charge of the grant. I am. But my internal imposter syndrome, it's an everyday battle. It's not like I've arrived and now all of a sudden I can tell you what to do. Right? It's an everyday battle. We have to validate who we are, and we have to stay true to who we are. And we have to give ourselves credit for it, right? That's the biggest part. We give ourselves credit for it. So why does it matter? So what if I'm insecure about who I am? What if I don't know that I'm the best counselor? How's that going to play out in your sessions? How will that play out in the workshops that you present? So imagine yourself walking into a room, and when it's a new environment and you're not sure what's about to happen, usually we're coming in a little bit scared, right? And we're like, our body language is like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm just going to take up as little space in this room as possible. Maybe nobody will notice me. But if you are the presenter, if you are the counselor, then the expectation is you're going to come into that room and own that room. I'm going to leave that a little bit with you. Think about every time you walk into a room, whether that's a virtual room here on Zoom or it's an in-person situation, you're walking into a situation. Are you owning that situation? Or are you waiting for someone to validate you before you can stand up on your feet? Okay. And our clients, they need us to be our best. They're expecting us to be our best. We're counselors. We have got to have everything figured out, right? We don't have any problems because we're counselors. We can just work through them magically. Of course, that's not true, but our clients do still have that expectation that we will have everything figured out. And thinking about your next counseling session, think about, who are you going to bring to that counseling session? Will it be the confident you or the not confident you? When you're bringing the scared you, how are you going to help that client? How well will the interventions be? Because when we're acting from a place of anxiety, when we're acting from a place of fear, of being unsure and lack of confidence, then probably all the interventions that you had in your head are going to fly away. You're going to forget about them. All the counseling techniques that you know will probably fly away, right? Because you are now functioning in, oh, what do I say next? What do I say next? And you're probably going to freeze. Okay. But when we are our best selves, then we function better, right? When I get enough sleep, I do better. When I validate who I am, I do better. So how does that play out? So let's imagine that you are a counselor with a little bit of imposter syndrome. Your first day in practicum. This is a true story, by the way, so I'm just going to give you an example. So you're a counselor, you're showing up to practicum. So you don't have the title just yet. You're a counseling trainee at this point, right? You show up and you have all this self-doubt that's like deep inside you. So then you're walking into the counseling session. It's your first real counseling session, right? You have a real person in front of you. So then you are in shock because this is a new situation. You have no idea what to do. Everything you know just kind of flew out of your head. You need some time to adapt to the situation. You're going to take that time, hopefully adapt. Good thing we have intakes, right? Because then you can just go down the paper and be like, what do I ask next? The first counseling session, you do the intake, you do a little bit of Rogerian, and you just listen. So no interventions. Great, first counseling went well. Does that give you confidence? when you just went from the intake, all you did was ask questions? Probably not so much, because then comes the next session, and now what do? You're done with the intake. What questions do you ask? What if the client is not talkative? So then you show up. And because you weren't sure in the first place, now you're also not sure. You probably didn't do research because you didn't really listen to what the client was saying. You were thinking about, what do I write down? What do I say? What do I do? Where's my body language? Where are my eyes? All of those things, right? So you were in your head, not in the counseling session. And then you show up to the second session, and the client happens to be the kind that questions you. So they're like, why do you want it? Why? I told you this last time, why do you want me to repeat yourself? And that just puts you even more in, like, you just want to hide. You just want to be in the corner in that room of like, what do I do now? And plus, of course, that week happened to be busy. You're stressed out, didn't get enough sleep. So you're not bringing your best self into that counseling session. And it could happen. This is the worst case scenario, right? That could happen. You could have a client who questions you. You could have all of that self-doubt, all of that shock, everything happening in your head. But remember, it's in your head, and you need to be in that counseling session, not in your head. Okay? So when we talk about the observer perspective of, like, we are in yourself, the observer, or the empathetic perspective, right? So we need to jump into that empathy so that we can be there with the client. So not in our head, not outside, we need to be with the client, right? And then let's just say things go well. And the client gives you that feedback of, like, you see the eye contact from the client, you see them repeating the things that you say, and it goes well. And you're finally able to get a glimpse of hope of, this is what I look like in the counseling session. And that glimpse of hope is what's going to get you to the next level. Right? And it could happen in the first session, it could happen in the second session, and the third, somewhere down the road. But that is where you need to find it, and you need to click it on and keep it on. Right? Is you're going to see yourself doing well, you need to capture that moment. And you're going to keep going with that. So thinking about, who is your best self, right? And of course, all of us have people in the past who told us things. Maybe they judged us and they verbalized their judgment on us. Maybe we are just too hard on ourselves. One thing a coworker of mine said, she said, don't let the negativity from others in the past be the negative voice in your head today. So you in the past, even if you failed and somebody told you you failed, you are not the same person today. And then thinking a little bit in CBT terms, so what if you do fail? What happens? You learn from that experience. You're not going to stop being a counselor because you messed up in one counseling session. And as long as we are not doing harm to our clients, our mess up might be just in our head, because our job as counselors is to be there for the client, right? It's just to be there. To be there is already 90% there. And then you do some interventions, and then you do some strategies. But goal number one is for you as the counselor to be in that counseling session. All right, so some tips of how are we going to battle that imposter syndrome when it comes around, right? So we talked a lot about the negative things, right? Let's talk about some positives. How do we battle it? So talk to your mentors. Everyone's gone through it. Don't know a counselor who hasn't gone through it. So ask them, how did they battle it? What did they do that helped them? For me, probably you can't tell, but I'm an introvert. So for me, it is natural to come into a space and take as much space in the room as possible. But what changes is if I know that I'm in control of that room, of that situation, then I can come in and own that room. So when you are coming into the counseling session, you, the counselor, are in control. When you're coming in and doing a presentation, as the presenter, you are in control. And it is up to you to let go of that control, of how much you feel comfortable giving away that control. Will you let the client lead the session? Will you let the public who's listening to you lead your presentation? It is up to you how much you let go and for how long. Okay. But you are the one who is doing the thing, right? You are the counselor. So talk to your mentors, figure out what did they do, recognize your expertise. So if you know that, for example, CBT is not your thing, forget about it, don't do it. If your client needs it, maybe you will do it. Maybe you refer out as a counselor, as a new counselor. But stick to the things you know well. If you're good at Rogerian, go for it. If you're good at Freudian, go for it. The client needs you to be there for them. And most of the time, they're willing to go down the path that you choose for them. So if you choose a path that is going to explore their childhood, by all means, if they're willing to explore their childhood, do it. The client will tell you if they want to go a different path. They'll tell you if it's not working. I don't know a client who's going to just keep coming to counseling if it's not working for them. They'll tell you somehow. You'll see it in their eyes, in their body language, in their attendance, all of those things. And then you can switch, because we all need to adapt to our clients, right? And how they function too. So do things you do well, and then work on the things you don't do well. Realize no one's perfect. This is a big one. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. None of us are perfect. And we don't have to be. Think about someone that you love, deeply, deeply love. It could be a friend, a relative, a significant other. You know they have flaws, but you still love them, right? And sometimes we love them because of those flaws. And flaws make us more human. And don't you think your clients would appreciate knowing that you're human and not a robot? Absolutely. Change your thinking. Use a little bit of that CBT on yourself. Use the counseling strategies on yourself to help you get through. We always say that if you're going to be a counselor, you should also be in counseling yourself. Because how else are we going to process all the feelings that come up for us in counseling sessions? It's not that we're going to be going to see a counselor and telling them everything that happened in another session. No, we're going to be telling what are we feeling, right? How am I as the counselor experiencing the counseling session? How am I as the counselor experiencing my profession? And we're there to help each other. All right, so these are the tips that APA article that I mentioned. These are the tips. Here's some more tips from Olga. Fake it till you make it. You fake confidence and then you get confidence, right? The first time a singer goes up on stage, most of the time they are not confident. I would say 90% of the time they are not confident. But they go there and they project confidence. And then at some point, the project confidence that they do with their body tells their brain, okay, I'm confident. When you think about interviewing, especially those of you who are career counselors, you know that before the interview, you should be doing what? You should be doing power poses, you should be doing relaxation techniques, all those types of things. Bring that into your counseling sessions. Before the counseling session, do a power pose. Do something that will help your body tell your brain that you're ready to go. I already talked about owning the room, right? To own the room you're in. Walk in, pretending like you own the world. Pretend like you know everything. And then when the client starts telling you things, if you don't know, that's okay. You tell them, I don't know, tell me more about that. Another thing that helps, especially new counselors, is playing things out in your head ahead of time. So if you have that client that questions you all the time and you know they're coming next time, how do you prepare for that? So what I used to do is I would take a piece of paper, divide it in two. On one side, I'll write, what are the questions that this client is probably going to ask me? How will they question me? And what will my responses be? So think about that for a second. So think about, what will the client ask you? What will they expect of you? When the client says, well, you tell me what to do, what will you respond to that? So playing all of those scenarios out in your head really helps. Talking them through also helps, because sometimes we know what to do, we don't know how to do it. And verbalizing things really helps, right? So if I know a bunch of CBT interventions, I need to know how to actually say them, right? I've seen them on paper, I've seen others do them, but I need to actually be able to say those interventions in the counseling session. So playing out these scenarios, I kind of see them, and I'm going to plagiarize Dr. Beta Rivas. She calls them the back pocket tools. Right? So what are you going to take out of your back pocket? So your client says A, what are you going to respond? So prepare those things ahead of time. And most likely you're going to end up not using them, because the client is usually not as harsh as we expect them to be. Yeah, they'll question some of your authority. But then as soon as you start answering with the confidence that you should have, they will respect you more. All right. Our next point is our professional development. As counselors, if we are not in the growth mindset, we're probably in the wrong field. We're never going to arrive and be the best counselor in the world. There's always something better that we can do. There's always an intervention we can do better. There's always something about our body language, our eye contact, all of those things. There's something that we can do better. So never stop growing, okay? And when you know that you have that growth mindset, then you can be prepared to grow, right? So when the session doesn't go so well, you're not going to go home and beat yourself down about it. You're going to think, what can I do better next time? How can I grow? Do I need to attend a workshop that'll help me grow? Do I need to read a book? All of those things. So when I talked about my period of not being a counselor by job title, there's a lot of patience involved in that, right? And patience is not one of my strong suits, I'll be honest, completely not one of my strong suits. So during that 6 years, I read a book about patience, about waiting. I read a book on biblical counseling. I read a book on internal peace, all of those things, because I needed help, right? Like when you have that dream and you know that you are good enough for that dream, but you can't reach it, you need the tools to come alongside of you and help you. Another one that I want to cover, when you become a new counselor and you develop a style, you develop the way that you do things, there will be people who will come and say, no, that's wrong. You should do it this way. And maybe it is wrong. If it is wrong, fix it. If you really, really believe that your strategies work and that your clients appreciate them and that you know that you are good at these strategies, then stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself and say that this is the way that I counsel. This is how it's worked with my clients. I'm going to stick with it. Some counselors are very Rogerian and they are very nice in the counseling sessions. They're very, I wouldn't say passive, but more just letting the client lead the session and just asking those follow-up questions. There are other counselors who are a lot more confrontational and they feel comfortable interrupting the client. They feel comfortable challenging the client, all of those kinds of things. So if you are that type of counselor and you know that it works with the clients, you see that it works with the clients, then stand up for yourself and say, this is how I counsel. Okay. And then finally, enjoy the moment. Counseling is fun. It's really hard, but it's really fun. Think about that high that you get, that adrenaline high after the counseling session. You walk out of the counseling session and you think, I may have just changed somebody's life for the better. So hold on to those thoughts. So after the counseling session is so important to just kind of hold on to those thoughts of, I just made somebody's day better. I just taught them a strategy they can use to help with their ex. Hold on to those feelings. And before the next counseling session that you have with that or another client, bring those feelings in and bring that positivity of, I'm ready. I'm ready to help this person. I'm excited to help this person. Because we're all in the business of helping people, right? We are all in the business of changing lives. Own it, enjoy it, really, really enjoy it. And yeah, there will be hard counseling sessions, lots of them. But you being there is what matters. So enjoy that moment when you are there. All right. So I'm going to bring another activity for you to think about. So for any of you who watched How I Met Your Mother, they always say, what would the future you tell the you of today and things like that. So now take yourself and put yourself down the road 10 years from now, 20 years from now as a counselor. And what would that future you want to tell you today that the future you would thank you for? So take a moment and think about that. So the future you who is successful, amazing, working as a counselor or something else, what would that future you want to tell the you of today? All right, so another strength or weakness of mine, my presentations are usually shorter than they should be. So I'm done with my part of talking. I'm more than happy to chat, answer any questions anyone has. There's the slide with my contact info. When I talked about advocating for yourself, also marketing yourself, there's my LinkedIn, feel free to add me. I hope you all are working on your LinkedIn accounts because that is your professional image of yourself online, right? All right, so I'm happy to take any questions. You can put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. So maybe as you're thinking about it, the example I talked about earlier with how the first session goes, the second session goes, and then that moment where you capture yourself as your best self. So I saw that happen with one of the counselors in practicum, and the first session was tough, the second session was tough, and then the third session, that counselor found that glimpse of her doing her best work. And that completely turned around how she did counseling sessions. That point on, she was a counselor at a 10. Whereas the first two sessions, she was a counselor at maybe a 5, a 6, a 7. And it was so amazing to see. It is so amazing to see when each of you find yourself. You find yourself as a counselor. So let yourself be found. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, Olga. Thank you very much for sharing your tips. Some of these tips are really eye-opening to me because I feel like they literally apply to me. And like, for example, the realize no one is perfect. I always think that like, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right word? People are watching me. What should I do? And talk to someone who can help. This is my second time doing practicum, So first time was totally on Zoom and I felt disconnected, but this time I have a professor right there, right by my side, walk me through steps by step. So I didn't realize that this imposter syndrome probably applied to me directly. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I appreciate this presentation a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, with the whole thing that nobody's perfect. For me, one thing that helps sometimes is when I'm reading textbooks that are for classes and I find mistakes in them. To me, that just helps. I'm like, okay, they're not perfect either. I mean, it's a textbook. You expect the textbook to be perfect. It's not, because the person wrote it, right? And then maybe an editor didn't see the mistake. And the same thing in our lives. We could be amazing counselors, but once in a while, something doesn't click. We have an off day. Something doesn't go right. We all have those. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. So Vida, Dr. Rivas asked the question in the chat, anyone here in practicum have any thoughts on how this intersects at our work with clients, students? If anyone has anything they'd like to share, feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Go ahead, Rob.
Olga, I just want to say I'm really glad that you did this presentation, and I really love like what you spoke to. Not to like give you further praises and everything, but I mean also since you are my supervisor, but one of the things that I love is like I'm not sure if I felt like you were talking about me when you're talking about the specific counselor, but one of the things that you kind of helped me through through mentoring and everything is like you had mentioned at one point, I guess talking specifically about me, where you didn't see me in those sessions, like you didn't see who that was. And I think that's because I walked into this, even with some practice, prior before this semester, I wasn't very confident walking into this. I think it took a few weeks, but finally, through mentoring and everything else, I finally started to feel like I actually feel like a real counselor, and starting to kind of, get on the ball as far as, finding my style and everything. So this just really spoke to me. I just wanted to comment on that and say thank you again for everything.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rob, for sharing. And yes, you are a real counselor. I'm just going to say that. Carissa.
So, Olga, thank you so much. I saw your, presentation during the Los Rios conferences and something like that. As always, you are perfect. And I'm glad to see you here. And I'm waiting for the, next semesters to take classes with you. And also that was really interesting for me because I'm a second language person. And as always, I was worried to, what I want to do in the future. But you gave me a, huge hope today. And thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carissa. And thank you for saying that I'm perfect. I'm not, but thank you for that. Earl, go ahead.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And as a student in practicum, I really appreciated how you explained and talked about owning the space, owning the room. And now with, I think, even my 5th or 6th client, as I'm trying to feel comfortable in the room. And it's very reassuring, as I'm still getting my feet wet and understanding how this all works, to just hear that, if I'm not in the room, they're present, that really does make a difference. And the client can tell. In the same way when I'm talking to the client, and I can tell that they're not being, fully honest with me about something, or they're glossing over it. I guess the feeling's the same. And I just wanted to say I really appreciated that. I can feel how that it does intersect directly with practicum. As I've been doing it more and more, and just telling myself, fake it till I make it, and it will be good. I will feel confident as I get going. I have felt myself on the room more. So thank you so much for speaking to that. I really do appreciate that. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Earl. Thank you. So there's a note from Shirley in the chat, so I'll read that. So I think one thought that I've been pondering over is that as a counseling intern, sometimes we push ourselves too much. Sometimes I feel bad when others who are more experienced, our supervisors, or other counselors, can tackle, process things better than we do. And I think it's important that it's important to constantly remind ourselves that others probably do have more experiences than we do, so it would make more sense that they would have more knowledge and expertise in certain areas. In the end, it's okay to make mistakes because we're all there to learn. Could not agree more with that. So when I started out as a counselor and all throughout my education and then up till now, most of the time I'm the youngest person in the rooms that I choose to be in. And sometimes it's rewarding because I'm like, I know that I got this, right? Other times it's super intimidating. Other times it's people who are more accomplished or they think they're more accomplished. They put you down on purpose, and it's tough and it hurts, but we're all good at something, first of all, right? And then second of all, we are all on a path. And sometimes you start your path later, sometimes you start it earlier. And the mistakes that you make along that path are what make you the person you are today. And without those mistakes, you would not be the amazing counselor that you are today, right? So think about that. So some mistakes that you will probably make in counseling will make you a better counselor. So embrace those. Dr. Rivas.
Thank you so much for doing this presentation. I think one of the things I think everyone's speaking to is a little bit of trusting the process in terms of counseling. Practicum is kind of this unique place where students feel overwhelmed because now you're applying everything, not literally every single class, but little bits of intake, a little bits of the 250 counseling skills class, a little bits of like you're just learning to weave it together like a crochet. And so you're not going to do that well, like learning how to crochet. If anyone's attempted to learn how to crochet, it's going to take a minute, and just trusting that we've all been there and the feedback is intended as a support, and that should be separate from how it should be absorbed as wanting to help us improve versus we're not good or not good enough. And that's the tricky thing when you're in there, because it feels you're in the hot seat when you're in there with a client. Like you feel responsible, and there's the separation needed that we're not responsible for them. We're on a journey with them while we're on our own journey, while we're in this journey with everyone else in the classroom and with our supervisors. And it's a process. And so that's one of the things you've been speaking to. And I appreciate that we are building our tool set, and that's okay to learn how to trust ourselves as we're learning this new art. Thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to read one more comment from the chat and then go to the next hand. So Aurora says, for me, realizing that when in doubt, feeling overwhelmed and feeling like I'm spiraling, I tend to stop or catch myself and realize that I have many supportive individuals in class and in practicum that allow me to feel supportive and that I'm not alone in this process. Also to appreciate the process in its ups and downs. Yeah, the support is huge. And I think that's why practicum is so valuable, because you have at least 5 other people who are there in the same journey with you. And a lot of the times making the same mistakes as you, right? And then you have your supervisor who is also not perfect. And you are all in this really, really tight-knit journey together. And it's just so amazing. And I would say that as much as I have probably supported my counseling students, they have supported me, because seeing them thrive also helps me thrive. Or seeing them make mistakes and then correct those mistakes, it just, you have no idea what it does to you. It's just so amazing to see somebody get something and then do something, right? When you tell your clients something in the counseling session, use an intervention with them, and then you see their face light up, and you see with that little light bulb go on in the side of their head. And it's the most amazing feeling as a counselor, right? And Kim, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I had a question. It's kind of goes off of that mentoring piece that you had on that one slide. I was just curious if you or any folks in the room are aware of like support networks or like listservs. I'm speaking more specifically just like as a woman, as an API woman who in this field, because I've talked to Dr. Rivas about it, as well as my other mentor, Dr. Marshall. Like I'm at this place where I'm getting close to graduating, as well as my peers as well. And there's this, I'm trying to trust the process too, but like I need to have continued conversations of what it feels like to be a woman of color, trying to figure out, do I want to get licensed or do I want to pursue a PhD? And even either or, as you know, API women, like there's not a lot of us in the field. So it's like, I'm looking for support groups or listservs or these like pockets of area if they exist or they don't. I guess I'm just kind of do some fact find, or like I'm doing like informational broad search right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one thing comes to mind right away, and I'm sure there are more answers to this. But my day job, so to speak, is in Los Rios, and I used to work at American River College, worked really closely with a counselor who is from the API community, and she participates in an association of, it's not counselors, it's just API professionals in the district and other places. So if you want, I can give you her contact information. She's an amazing counselor and I think would be good to talk to. So if you send me an email, I'll put my email in the chat and then I'll shoot that back to you. All right, well, thank you everyone for your feedback. Thank you for coming to this workshop on a Thursday morning. If you need to go and take a break between the next thing today, then you're more than welcome to go. If you want to stay, ask more questions or do anything, say things, you're welcome to stay.